viewers. Tonight you'll meet lifelong revolutionary Sekou Odinga. For over 30 years, a U.S. political prisoner, and now newly freed. We'll hear about Sekou's youth, manhood, and life as a resistor against the U.S. empire, member of the Black Panther Party, and prisoner of the state. He was, as a youngster, a follower of Malcolm X and a member of Malcolm's Organization of Afro-American Unity, or OAAU. He continued to follow the Black freedom movement into revolutionary and nationalist movements. He was born Nathaniel Burns in the Bottom, Jamaica, Queens, New York, in 1945. The struggle for freedom took him all the way to Algiers in Algeria, where the Black Panther Party had its international section under the late Minister of Information, Eldridge Cleaver. Today, he still fights for freedom. Let's have a warm welcome from inside the activist studio for Brother Sekou Odinga.
Welcome, so have a seat.
Good evening.
Good evening, yes.
And good evening to everyone else. Assalamu alaikum. It's really good to see so many people out here tonight. Alhamdulillah. All right.
Wonderful. So starting from the beginning, when and where were you born?
I was born in Jamaica, Queens, New York, on June 17th, 1944. I'm 71 years old.
You grew up in Jamaica, Queens, as you mentioned. How did your family get there? Where were they from?
Well, they got there by way of Georgia, Ohio, and Mississippi. My mother was born in Georgia, spent her teen years in Ohio. My father was born in Mississippi.
And what are your parents' names?
Albert and Carrie Burns. Albert Burns, Carrie Stringfield.
What do you remember about your mother?
That she was a wonderful woman, wonderful, strong, caring, loving, able to do all the things that a man or a woman could do just about. I've seen her do everything. She taught me how to plumb. She taught me all the plumbing I knew, the electrician work I could do, the carpentry work I could do. She did it all. She could do it all.
Powerful. Now, you've described your father as the strongest man in the world. Tell us about who he was and a little bit about the world that he inhabited.
He was very strong. He was, as I said, he was from Mississippi. He's an African from the Delta, old country boy. And he's worked hard all his very young age. He had very little education. I think he went to the 4th grade, was self-taught. In the early 50s, he started a business in Queens, New York, coal delivery, where he delivered coal back in them days. Many of the houses still had coal furnaces to heat and to heat the hot water and stuff like that. So he sold coal to the private houses and mostly the private homes out in Queens. And so he's just a hard-working man. I've always known him to work 16, 17, 18 hours a day. My father was the only person I ever seen stand up and fall asleep. He used to sleep from job to job, you know. So that's basically who he was, a hard-working man from the South.
I want to read a quote from James Baldwin. Baldwin has observed that, quote, the most private, the most serious thing racism does to the subjugated is to destroy his sense of reality. It destroys, for example, his father's authority over him because his father has no power in the world. So when you were a child, you saw your father being beaten by the police. Can you tell us the impact of that incident on you?
I didn't actually see him beaten by the police. I saw the results of the beating by the police. When he come home, his face was all swole up and He was hurting all over. He was beaten because he was parked next to a hydrant delivering coal. And when the police told him to move the truck away from the hydrant, he had a 100-pound sack of coal on his back. So he said, "Right away, sir," and took the coal in first, though, and then come back to move the truck. And they took that as disrespect, I guess, and they brutalized him, they terrorized him. They beat him up real bad. And so I think it had a profound effect on most of his children. We couldn't understand why he didn't fight back, because we knew him to be the strongest person I've ever seen. We always thought of him as being the toughest man too, you know, and he didn't even fight him back. But he explained to us that there were other ways of fighting, and he chose to fight him the other way. He took him to court and won a settlement off him. But it didn't stand good with me anyhow, though, because I've never been the turn the other cheek type of guy.
Now, what did it feel like for you to go through the public schools in New York in the 1950s? Life magazine in 1958 had an article called "Big Cities Problem Pupils," right? Big Cities Problem Pupils. Beset by poverty, lawlessness in school, they taste New York's harsh discipline. All right, so just wanted to share that with you, that image. Mm-hmm. Does that slip look familiar to you?
Well, I'm sure I got a few of them.
So tell us about 600 schools. Tell us about the schools that, the alternative schools that you were put in, and why were you placed there? 600
schools in the 50s and 60s were basically schools that they sent the problem children, as they call them. Those who played hooky or constantly was sent to the principal's office, etc. And I became one of them in the 7th grade. You know, I was blessed to find schoolwork rather easy, so I guess I was bored a lot. And you couldn't speak in class without permission. You had to, and me and those like me were always running our mouths after we did our work or before we did our work. And so I was constantly getting in trouble from, I guess, from the 3rd or 4th grade up to the 7th grade. And I guess in the 7th grade, well, actually in the 6th grade, I started playing hooky from school. Not playing hooky means not going to school. And between playing hooky and causing what they call a disturbance, whenever you talked in the class, that was a disturbance in class. I was singled out to being one of those problem children that was sent to 600 schools. The 600 schools were disciplinary schools where to go there, your parent had to give them permission to beat you. You know? And so they would, if you broke one of their rules, they had a certain amount of licks that they would give you with these wooden rulers, long wooden rulers they had, or pointers, I think they were. Whatever they were wooden, I know that. And they would make you bend over and take these licks. So consequently, there was a lot less problems, but you learn a lot less too, because they concentrated more on discipline than on educating.
It seems like there were a lot of different things pulling you in different directions at that time. Your parents were very strict. You were hanging in the streets. What won out and why?
Well, I guess the streets won out because I wind up like so many young black males in the 50s and 60s joining a gang. I joined a local gang, a neighborhood gang, when I guess I must have been about 12 when I first went to junior high school. And so that meant I had to be with the gang, you know, so against my parents' will and their orders, I was always running in the streets with my gang, you know, so getting in trouble, I got in a lot of trouble, you know. Not big trouble, nothing that sent me away, but enough to take you down the precinct and get beaten by the police, the local police. 103rd Precinct was notorious for beating the youth in those days. So I took my share of whippings from them and then went home and took them from Pop. You know?
And then you ended up in prison.
Eventually, when I turned 16, I was arrested for wilding, really, just running the streets, robbing folks. We stole a car, just acting the fool, you know, like so many of the youth were doing back then. And I was sent away as a youthful offender, given a 3-year term in one of the, it was a state prison when they had just turned the Comstock into a correctional institute. So most of the prisoners there were still older guys, but they were starting to send the young, if you will, incorrigibles there. And so I wound up there. It was a very racist joint, no blacks in the school, no Hispanics, no one, white rednecks. And they made sure that everyone knew racism was the order of the day. You had black fields to play ball in, you had black handball courts, you had black basketball courts, you had Hispanic fields, Hispanic basketball courts, and white, et cetera, et cetera. And the whites would always had the best, and the Spanish had the next best, and the blacks always had the worst. So at some point in 1963, they had a very big race riot there where we went off and tore up the joint, really. And so I think that probably was the start of my real political education.
Yeah, I wanted to sort of get into that. So you went into prison, Nathaniel Burns, and when you came out of prison, you became Sekou Mgabazi Abdullah Odinga. How did that transition happen? How did Nathaniel Burns become Sekou Odinga?
When the revolution comes, transit cops will be crushed by the trains after losing their guns, and blood will run through the streets of Harlem, drowning anything without substance. When the revolution comes, when the revolution comes, when the revolution comes, when the revolution comes, I hope pearly white teeth fall off the mouths that speak of revolution without revolution.
The revolution came, right?
Like I said, the jail was very racist, and so I think that's where I first started really. I mean, of course, I had seen a certain amount of racism in the streets. I grew up in a mixed neighborhood. Blacks was moving in, whites was moving out. But at one point, it was probably as many whites as blacks or many blacks as whites. And so I heard the N-word called to me many times, but I gave as good as I got. I used the C-word, and for every nigga I was, they were a cracker. So I never really thought of it as much. It was just the way it was, Only thing that ever really caught my attention before going to jail was in '54 when Emmett Till was killed. That was the one thing, I guess, as a child that I remembered that really made me question why were black people treated the way they were in America. But going back to Comstock, because of the riot there, we were locked down for 40-some days. And there was a lot of conversation, they didn't have TVs and all that back then. So people were talking about the racism and why it was necessary to fight for your rights and why it wasn't, and what other ways were there to struggle for your rights, and what rights do you have, what rights did you have, who give you them rights, and etc. So this is when I really, I guess, started thinking. I had a friend named Lumumba Shakur, whose father was with Malcolm X, and he used to send him information from basically the stuff that Malcolm was saying and writing, and he would pass it on to me. He was actually doing that before the riot, but reading it, I really wasn't internalizing too much of it until after the riot and we was all locked down and people were talking about it. And then I started kind of understanding what Malcolm was saying. And I made up my mind then that I would check him out when I got out of prison. This was in '63, so when I come out, I only had, after the riot, I only had about 6 months left anyhow. So when I got out, I did that.
Now, I remember that you talked about attending the World's Fair in '64, '65, and the impact of going to the Africa Pavilion and the ideal of cultural revolutionary nationalism. This is a great postcard that kind of recreates from that time what the Africa Pavilion looked like, right? Yeah. So I wanted to get a sense from you, like, why did you embrace cultural revolutionary nationalism?
I worked at this here pavilion, I didn't actually work there. I helped out there. I wasn't paid to work there. And one of the things that they had asked us to do was to model some African clothing. And I started modeling some of the dashikis and akbatas and different African attire. And everybody around me, even those who were born in America, had African names. And all of them wore their hair natural, and all the sisters were really beautiful in their natural garb and stuff. So I was really impressed, and I think that's what kind of got me interested in the cultural aspect of nationalism, you know. And so they would always ask me, why don't I change my name? Why don't I change my name? So in '65, I decided to change my name. The World Fair was '64, '65. It was 2 years. So by the second year, I had decided I would change my name. But I was still very interested in what Malcolm X was saying, and people like him. He wasn't the only one talking about that. And so I got involved with the nationalists in Harlem, and I joined the Organization of African OAAU, the Organization of Afro-American Unity, and I changed my name. I decided to change my name to a revolutionary name. I took my name from different revolutionaries around the world. Sekou came from Sekou Touré, who had led a successful struggle against colonialism in Guinea, and Oginga Odinga from Kenya, who was part of the Mau Mau's, who had led a successful struggle against colonialism in Kenya. So that's kind of how my name came about.
So you left the OAAU and you started an organization called the Grassroots Advisory Council. What problems did you face in your organizing work in Queens?
All kinds of problems. First of all, I was not an organizer. I had just recently joined Malcolm X's organization, and he was murdered. And so I really never learned how to organize. But after his passing, his Sister Ellen, took over, and there were those of us who didn't think that she was really instituting the program that he was telling us that he wanted to institute. So we decided to try to do that on our own in Queens. That's where I'm from, Jamaica. And so that's what I got with some brothers and sisters out there who were thinking like I was thinking. And we organized a little organization, got us a little storefront, and started trying to organize within the community. So we started out by cleaning up the neighborhood, literally getting brooms and trash bags and going down to the worst part of the neighborhood and cleaning it up. And people came out and helped us and asked questions about who we were and what we were. And so we did start getting a little foothold in there. What they did was put anti-poverty programs in a lot of different communities, Black communities, Hispanic communities, and they were sending a lot of money into those communities. And when we heard that they were sending money into our community to help, supposedly to help better the community, we wanted a part of it. So we went down, and after a lot of struggling with them, we actually joined the anti-poverty program, took jobs with them. I was involved with the youth. They had me, they gave me a office to organize the youth in a certain area of Jamaica. And, but we could never get the funds. The funds was never available for no programs. It was always you write the program, you submit it, and it always was denied, not enough money. So we got kind of discouraged or disgusted with the anti-poverty program. Around that time, this was 66. Around that time, we started hearing about the Black Panther Party out in Oakland. Mm-hmm. So some of us decided that sounded more like what we wanted to be involved in. And so some of us went out there, about 4 of us went out there to check it out. And they sent the message back that this was the real deal and we should check it, we should try to get involved with it. Around the same time, people from Oakland was coming to New York from the Black Panther Party, the Central Committee of the Black Panther Party. Mm-hmm. And they were looking to start a chapter in New York. So I went to one of the early meetings. I think it was the first meeting they had. And when they decided that they were going to actually start one there, I joined.
So when you joined the Panthers, during the interview beforehand, you discussed people just flooding into the offices and people being very interested in becoming part of what the Black Panther Party represented at that time.
It was much like today. It was rampant police abuse, police brutality, police murders, you know, the same problems like bad housing, bad schools, poor, lots of unemployment, poor working conditions. I mean, just whatever's wrong today was wrong then, you know. And so we thought that this was a vehicle that we could use to try to change some of that. And so we got with them. I became a section leader of the Bronx, but we didn't even have a Bronx office, you know. But because the things were so bad in New York, it just seemed like the youth was thinking like I was. It was just so many we started here in Brooklyn at LIU, and we started with about, I think the first meeting we had about 50 people, 50, 60 youngsters. And every Saturday it got more and more until they were all out in the street. They couldn't get in the building. It was just, they mobbed it. Everybody wanted to be part of it. So when I say everybody, of course, that wasn't everybody, but so many of us did want to be a part of it. So we decided that we had to open offices in different places in the city, and we started opening offices around the city. Mm-hmm. Jamaica, Queens, Bronx, Harlem, Mount Vernon, Brooklyn, and 2 or 3 offices in Brooklyn.
Well, we have some images of the Panther office. Well, what was your day like as a Panther on the streets of New York?
It was a lot of work. We was always trying to come up with programs to deal with the different problems. We initially started working on some of the housing problems in Harlem, Bronx, because there was a lot of them. And the first was always the police brutality. We started working around that. The Black Panther Party initially started to deal with the police brutality in Oakland, California. The brothers and sisters would follow the police around and watch them as they did their job. When they stopped someone in the street, the brothers and sisters would get out of their cars with the law books, and then you could carry guns legally as long as you kept them open. So they would watch the police do their job with their guns on their shoulder and their law book in their hand. And if they seen the police doing something wrong, they would tell them, hey, you're not supposed to do that. Brother, you don't have to let him do that. And he would read them the law. So that was one of the programs we started trying to do in New York, is deal with some of the problems with police brutality. And housing was the next problem that I can recall that I personally was working with them on trying to do. And selling papers. Everyone had to sell a certain amount of the Black Panther paper to help finance the different programs that were going on. That winter, we started a clothing drive where we would gather clothing from the different stores and the cleaners, and we would give the clothing out. We started food giveaways. We started a program where we would accompany the seniors to the banks on their Social Security Day when they got their checks, because it had become a problem in Harlem where some of the drug abusers would single out their neighbors that they knew were getting Social Security and would rob them. So we started taking them to the bank, then go to them to the stores with them, and just protecting them. And it brought about a lot of support from the community, you know.
Now, in the fall of '68, 21 Panthers were arrested on false charges. Can you tell us about that? We have a picture of the Panther 20, some of the members of the Panther 21 there.
Well, like you say, it was in '68, so it's a long time ago. But what I can basically remember on that day, what they did, it was try to arrest all of the leadership from the Bronx Harlem chapter of the Black Panther Party, and that totaled 21. Part of the idea that they had was that even though these charges were ridiculous, blowing up the Botanical Gardens, gonna blow up the Lincoln Tunnel, was gonna bomb some department store during Christmas or Easter, during these type of ridiculous charges. But they didn't really care whether the charges were ridiculous or not. What they were doing was taking the leadership off of the streets and making then they were not effective in organizing in the streets, obviously, if they're not there. Then you had to take all your funds to try to get lawyers for them, to get bail for them, to help support their families. It was just, so from their point of view, it was very successful. A lot of people say because we were able to eventually be acquitted of all those false charges, that it was a big victory for us, but they forget that it took 2 years, and during those 2 years, so much happened negatively while we were in jail.
Well, after the 21 case, you end up in Algeria. Why Algeria, and how did you get there?
The 21 case, what they did is they came early in the morning to arrest everyone. When they came to arrest me, I had a door that they couldn't kick open. And so because they couldn't kick the door open, they basically had to just stand out and threaten me to open the door, you know. I was living in an apartment where I was on the top floor, and I had a little bathroom window about 18 by 12, and next to the window was one of those cement drain pipes that was painted the same color of the building. And so they were all around the building and on top of the roofs and in the hallway, but they never thought nobody would come out of to see a window because there was no way down that they could see, but that pipe was right there. So I was able to escape from them and go underground. Go underground, basically what I mean is change my name, change my persona, and continue to live. While underground, I got orders to go to Algeria and help the Minister of Information, Eldridge Cleaver, establish an information center there, what turned out to become like an embassy there, actually. And that's what I did. I did that because I was told to do that. The idea was to disseminate information about what we were doing here in the struggles of the United States, especially what the Black Panther Party was doing and other revolutionary organizations, and to assimilate information from other revolutionary struggles around the world, and try to bring it back and send it back to the U.S. through our papers and through our other media about what was going on in other areas of the struggling world, and so that people here would know that people in Africa, people in Latin America, people in Asia were going through the same thing. So what we were trying to do is link our struggle up with world struggle.
What was your first month like in exile?
Yeah, I ain't seen that, but it was different. It was a different country. Most of the people spoke different languages. They spoke Arabic and French there, and I couldn't speak either. So it had its difficulties, but it was good in a lot of other ways. We were meeting revolutionary people from around the world, people who were struggling and was learning about other people's struggles and learning about other experiences that people were going through. We were meeting people, we were making friendships, we were making comrades around. So on one level it was difficult, but on another level it was very good.
So it seems that your activities internationally involved meeting with a lot of different people from other parts of the world, revolutionaries, etc. An example of some of your activities.
That was a picture of us in our embassy in Algeria. That was Eldridge Cleaver, D.C. Cox, and at the time it was the head of the PLO, Yasser Arafat, and that was me in behind there. But that's what it was, meeting with people, talking about what we can do to help each other.
Now, one of the things of note, I think, is that people built families during their time in exile. People like Kathleen and Eldridge Cleaver, Pete O'Neill and Charlotte O'Neill as well. What are some of your fondest memories of comrades and friends and those sorts of things?
Just being with them. I lived with Pete O'Neill and Charlotte with their young son, Malcolm, at the time. My wife and 3 of my children were with me. My twins, I had twin boys and a daughter with me. One of my twins right there. So I remember just living with them, eating with them, laughing with them, struggling with them, arguing with them, just being comrades with them, Not just them, it was, like I said, it was about 21 of us there. My closest comrade's name was Larry. Larry Mack came from Queens with me. We had required reading. And our required reading would always bring about a lot of very good discussions. We would always discussing books that we were reading, arguing about them. What did this mean? What does that mean? And so those are the type of memories that I think of fondly.
Mm-hmm. Well, what changes in Algeria prompted your return to the U.S.?
The ability to do the work. At some point, it became impossible to do the work. The United States government was not happy that we were making such good friends in another part of the world and was getting so much respect from so many people. And they put the pressure on the Algerian government they tried to get them to get rid of us, to put us out. They refused to do that, but they did for economic reasons. Economic reason meaning that they would sign a big gas contract, natural gas contract with the United States, and one of the United States' demands was that if they were going to sign that, then they would have to quiet us down. And they did that. They told us we would have to turn everything over to them before we sent it to the States, which kind of said to us, well, all right, our days here is probably up. So we start trying to make preparations to leave.
And how did you resume your work in the Black Power movement when you came back to the U.S.?
Again, I went underground, and I continued to do the things we had been doing. By the time I got back, it was a little better organized than it was when I left. And so I was able to get with other people who were working underground and continue to work to support the above ground and to do the things that we needed to do to try to help free our political prisoners, our prisoners of war.
And how would you explain this underground to someone who knew nothing about it?
When I say underground, and what people mean when they say underground, is that you're working under assumed names. You know, you change your name, you change your persona. You know, you try to present to the world a front that will make you seem like everyone around you, and continue to do the other work that you were doing while living that front. That's kind of basically, I guess, in short, what I would mean by underground.
So were there women, white people, and other people of color involved in the underground?
Yeah, they were from every race, from every community, you know. I worked with what we call mother country radicals, you know. A lot of them came out of organizations like SDS, Weather Underground, Peace and Freedom, and then the Hispanic, like the Young Lords and other organizations that they were involved in. So we worked with a lot of folks. We worked with everybody that was willing to work with us and have the type of principles and the aims and goals that we had.
Well, why did the movement decide to liberate Assata Shakur?
Mostly opportunity. The opportunity presented itself, and it seemed possible. We were always looking for any of our comrades to help any of our comrades to be free. So when the opportunity showed itself and we were able to check it out and thought it was a good opportunity, that's how she was chosen. I think we were always, and not just us, all comrades are always looking for an opportunity to help free a political prisoner or prisoners of war. And so when that opportunity came, some of the folks that I was working with, we took the opportunity.
What do you remember about visiting Assata while she was incarcerated?
Assata was Assata. If you knew her, she was very intelligent. She was very focused. She always had ideas about what you could do to help in the community, what you could do to help a particular comrade, what you needed to do to make yourselves more efficient. And so visiting her that's how visiting her was, you know. But she was a warm person. She was funny. She was real. She was just a real person that, like anybody, well, not just like anybody, but she was someone that I think was intelligent, committed, and always ready to give you some advice or to help you do what it is that you needed to do.
Now, this past November 2nd marked 36 years since Assata was liberated from prison. So why did this woman, Assata Shakur, become so important to the movement?
I think because of her commitment, because she was like me and you. She was regular people, and she was a captive, a political prisoner who found a way to be free when they told us she would never be free. And so it was an important victory for that in itself. But I think when you look at her, she just looks like any other sister, you know, that might be in this audience, you know. So people could relate to her. And so I think that's why she became so important, and people could see that, you know, this is who I am, who we are, and the need to free our political prisoners was there, and she just made it real, you know, that, and she made freeing political prisoners real, that, oh, you could actually free political prisoners more than one way, you know, so that was...
Now, can you define political prisoner? What is a political prisoner?
Someone that's been imprisoned for their political beliefs, their political speech, or their political activity. That's basically how I would define a political prisoner in short. I mean, we have a number of other definitions that we could go through, but in short, that's what I would say.
Well, what can you tell us about the circumstances of your arrest on October 23rd, 1981? How did the man, the myth, the legend land in prison?
There was some actions that had happened here in New York, and there were some problems. I was always trying to help with problems that I could help with. And so I had come to New York to try to help with the problem. They were looking for some people who did an action up in Rockland County, and they had a shootout up there, and a couple of officers had got shot, and so they had all three states look out for certain people, and so I had come to New York to try to help get one of those people out of New York. And as fortune would have it, they spotted us, and there was a chase, eventual capture, and a murder of the comrade that they were looking for.
What were the conditions of your imprisonment?
I was sent straight from court to Marion, Illinois, which was a lockdown prison that was, as they call it, the baddest of the bad and the worst of the worst. But really, it was just a bad prison. It wasn't the people, and it was no worse than any other prison. But the conditions were very bad. Initially, when I first got there, we had a shower 3 times a week for 10 minutes at a time, and that was the only time that we got out of our cells. We were fed in our cells and everything else. So it was very harsh. It was a lot of whippings. They were always beating the prisoners for little or nothing, you know. So just the conditions was horrible.
And you were moved at least 6 times during during your time.
More than that, but yes.
More than that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. In the federal system, they often move prisoners around. I'm not sure why. I have my ideas, but it's a common thing. It wasn't just me. Most prisoners got moved around. If they spent the type of time I spent 28 years in the federal system. Most people who spent 28 years in the federal system has been in the 6, 7, 8, 9 joints. So that's just the way they do it.
Now, in terms of prison population around you, you experienced sort of federal prison after September 11th, and so you saw a change in the prison population. What can you tell us about observing those differences, or who were some of those people?
Well, the last prison I was in the federal system was Florence, Colorado. And one of the things that I found that I didn't know was there was a whole lot of political prisoners there from places like Afghanistan, Pakistan, Iraq, Palestine. There's places that I didn't know they were snatching people off the street, but it turns out that if they thought you supported a group that they considered, they being the United States government, if they thought you supported a group that they considered to be terrorists or anti-American or anti-Israeli, to them, that's a criminal offense. And they were snatching people off the street and telling them that they believed they were terrorists, or they believed that they support terrorism, take them to another country, torture them to make them say what they want them to say, bring them to New York, Southern District. Half of them, more than half of them, can't even speak English. And they all of them wind up getting found guilty. And they got them out there in the Gulag out in Colorado. So that was very surprising to me, because you didn't see that many of them on the main line in the other prisons. So I had seen some, but most of them I had knew of. I had read of, people like that came out of the World Trade Center buildings, the bombings from that, and the blind sheikh and people that were with him that we knew about. So I expected to see them. In fact, I did time with them in different federal joints, but I didn't know that they were just picking people up off the streets and in these places and locking them up. But so that was the change after 9/11.
Now tell us about the community you found in prison, especially when it comes to spirituality.
Islam is a big part of my life, and I became much more involved in Islam while in prison. I think most religious groups are a little stronger or a little more serious in prisons, not just Muslims, the Protestants, the Catholics, the Buddhists, you name it. Most of the religions have become more serious in prison for a lot of reasons, But one of the reasons is that you got a lot more time to study religion. You got time, and you have a lot more opportunity to practice your religion. And so, even though the administrations that I was under often were giving us problems with practicing our religion, we were able to practice it. And so, I found that most of the Muslims that I was around were very close-knit, and so living with people, praying with people, eating with people, you become very close.
Now, when you were in Algeria, the Atlantic Ocean was between you and your family sometimes. What was it like to have the American prison stand between you and your family?
I don't know if they were able to actually stand between us. They made it difficult for us to be together, but I did maintain contact with my family while I was in prison. I did get visits from them, although not nearly as much as I would have liked, but about as much as I guess they could, you know, because like you say, I was moved all around the country, and it was very difficult for my family to see me. So before my mother and father passed, I've seldom seen them. I think I only seen them in the 20 years or so that before they passed, maybe 4 or 5 times outside of the state once I left New York. My mother and I were very close. She used to visit me quite a bit when I was in New York. But once I was in Illinois or in Colorado or in Kansas City or in one of them other places, it was very difficult for her to visit me. And in her last few years, she developed cancer, so it made it even that much harder to visit. So in that way, prison kept us apart, but we were able to write and to talk on the telephone. So, and I did that as much as I could with with my mother and the rest of my family.
And what were your hardest moments in prison?
Losing family members, losing my son. I lost a son while I was in prison, and I guess that was the hardest.
So tell us a little bit about your son, Yaki Gaddafi.
He was a wonderful kid, beautiful kid. He was a rapper, a poet, a conscious young man who had a lot of the, I guess, problems that other young people have. You know, he come up in the streets. He was. Those who know him will tell you that he was an excellent rapper, and some of his rap was very conscious, some of it wasn't. I don't know too much what I can say about him, but I loved him, that he was a great kid that was gone much too soon.
Who supported you while you were in prison? How did that support change over the years in terms of movement support?
The movement supported me in different ways. I always were able to call movement lawyers. There was never a time when there wasn't at least one movement lawyer phone number that I was able to call when I needed to call them. Different organizations over the years supported me, mostly organizations that were set up to support political prisoners. But then there were times when the support just wasn't there, you know, especially like when I was out in Kansas City, you know, at Leavenworth prison, you know. There were times when we just didn't have the support. It wasn't there, you know, for whatever reason. You can name any number of reasons why, but there were times when there was no physical support. When I say physical, I mean like funds for commissary or funds for a pair of sneakers or whatever you needed. But over the years, the support was there, and you know, I don't think any political prisoner would tell you that they had as much support as they wanted or needed. But I think we all got a little and continue to get some. I think that's a big problem even today, that we don't have, our political prisoners don't get the support they should get, that they need to get, you know. Lawyers will help out, but if you're not paying a lawyer, then you're going to always wind up on the back burner. Of course, they got to, because of their job, do the work for the ones who's paying them first. Right. And so that means that the political prisoner, if he's not paying the lawyer, which most of us weren't able to do, usually we were on the back burner. So that's one of the things that I think today that we, those of us who are supporting political prisoners, prisoners of war, try to do, is raise money to help them get lawyers, to help their families travel to see them, to help them with commissary, And even though that's not a lot of money, it's a lot of money. You know, for them, for us, you know. A lawyer, most lawyers, they start at 25, 30,000 and go up. So now, I don't think that's no whole lot of money in today's economy, but for someone like me, that's a hell of a lot of money. And for someone that's in jail, who's used to getting $50 a month if he get that, it's almost out of their reach. So what we need to do, and what we tell folks that they need to do, is try to raise money to help them get the things that they need, especially legal advice and legal help to file the different briefs and things that they need to file in the courts, and to visit them. We have many of our political prisoners are sick, you know, they're getting older, you know, and they're having medical problems that are not being taken care of. And we need lawyers to get in there to demand that they get the care that we need. Doctors, we need our lawyers to get in there to demand that they get the doctors that they need. They need the medicines. There's like Mumia, if he could get certain medicines, he probably would be a whole lot better. Right now, they're trying to kill him out of medical neglect. Seth Hayes, same thing with him. Kamal Siddiqui in Atlanta. Just so many of them need the aid. You know, we got political prisoners like Veranza Bao, who was released by his sentence. He did all the time they're supposed to do, but the government decided that they don't want to let him out anyhow. So for 11 years, he's been in jail for nothing. For nothing. And most people don't even know who Veranza Bowles is. We're not saying free our political prisoners, which we should be doing.
Well, you endured over 33 years of imprisonment. How did you understand the outside world during those years, the changes that were happening out there?
We get books, you get papers, you get magazines, you watch TV, so you get a idea of what things are like in the streets. But of course, it's nothing like actually coming out here and experiencing what it's like after 33 years. It's a brand new world to me out here, you know, almost in every sense of the word, you know. Even just the neighborhoods where I grew up and where I spent time at, they all look different now. They all, of course, the cars are talking to you now. And I mean, there's so many things that's different that, you know, it's a new world. It's a brand new world out here compared to when I left, you know.
Well, tell us about your love story with Daquis.
My love story with Daquis.
Your love story with Daquis.
Well, I met Daquis while in prison. As you see, the picture there was us in prison. She was a activist herself. She is an activist. She was working on helping political prisoners, prisoners of war, get what they need and get information out about us. And we became close when she started working on my case in particular. I asked her would she help my son organize a defense committee for me. And she agreed to do that. And so we were constantly back and forth talking to her on the phones. And it just, initially when I first seen her, you know, she's such a beautiful, physically beautiful woman. So that already caught my attention. And then to find how intelligent she was to go along with that enhanced it, and her commitment just put it over the top. You know, so you would have to ask her, you know, about why she would mess with something like me. I have no idea. I'm happy. I always say that the Creator sent her to me. and that it was something maybe.
Well, you've become known as the Spider-Man of the movement, likely because of your exit through that very narrow window. How did Spider-Man get out of prison?
Well, I was able to file a brief about a jurisdictional question that I found that the government and the state had messed up on. And from filing that brief, that basically took 28 years. They gave me back 28 years. And so that made me immediately eligible for parole. If I had made parole, I would, of course, went back into court to argue. My argument was that they were supposed to release me in the first place. That was my argument. And it was a winning argument, actually. They really did make a mistake, and their laws say when they make that mistake, they pay the price. And so that's what I was pushing at them, that you made the mistake, you released me, you have no right to get me back now. And so that's kind of how I got out here.
So you were released from prison November 25th, 2014. So what does a year in freedom meant in the life of Sekou Odinga?
Struggle, continued struggle, love of family and friends, commitment to those I left behind. That's my family there. That's all my boys. Yeah. No, that ain't all of them. But that's at a basketball game, the first time we were able to go to a basketball game together after I come home. But that's what it's been. It's been just getting to know my family again, getting to know my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren, you know, building a life with my wife, a home with my wife, committing myself to the struggle of the brothers and sisters that's left behind in the joint, trying to help in any way I can to bring attention to political prisoners, prisoners of war, and to work on Abdullah Majid's case in particular of his commitment. He's someone that I've known all my life. We grew up together. We were preteens. I met him when he was about 9 and I was about 12, something like that, or 8. Thinking maybe he was about 8. I don't know. I know he was 3-4 years younger than me, because his older brother and I went to school together. That's how I met him. But he was part of the Grassroots Advisory Council with me, and he was part of the anti-poverty program with me and the Black Panther. So we come up through the ranks together. So I'm committed to trying to help bring him home. I believe he's in jail because they couldn't find no one else. And they're like, I don't believe he done what he did, what they say he did. And if he did, I would still be working to try to bring him home, because 33 years is way enough for me. Which I would say to that also that, you know, we do have a right to struggle. You know, we have, by any means, we can't let those who oppress us tell us how we must struggle. We give props to other political prisoners that come home, like Nelson Mandela and all of the brothers from the ANC, and they did the same things that most of our political prisoners are accused of. And we say yay, yay, yay to them, and we ignore our own political prisoners. You know, even President Obama went over to South Africa and gave props to Nelson Mandela for doing what he did, but yet he don't do nothing to help free some of these political prisoners right here in this here country. think it's clear to a lot of us who've been studying this whole phenomena of political prisoners that COINTELPRO was at the bottom and the top of why so many of us were illegally and unfairly locked up because of COINTELPRO, the counterintelligence program of the United States government. And their own committees, like the Church Committee and some other committees that looked into that, all say the same thing, that it was illegal. But yet, the people who were locked up from those illegal programs are still being held, and no one is saying to turn them loose, or not enough of us are saying to turn them loose. And so we need to bring some clarity to that issue and some pressure to that issue to free our political prisoners of war.
So what's next for Sekou Odinga?
Same thing. I'll continue as long as I can to struggle to try to bring some of these, all of them, bring all of the political prisoners home, bring our political refugees who are not allowed, such as Assata Shakur, Nahanda, William Morales. There's a number of them that's in exile. We need to bring them home. And they won't be allowed to come home and live freely without us doing something to make that happen. So that's what's next for me, to continue to work to help those who I've left behind.
Well, we thank you so much for your time and for your story, for your commitment, your sacrifice, all of it is so inspirational. So I just want to pause and just let us acknowledge and, you know.
Well, I thank you all. I agree. Free them all. Let's free them all.
Look, you gotta be like him, or be like her. The revolution gonna reoccur. Be Sekou, be Jalil. Who really wanna get free for real? Be a soldier, be a rebel. Who wanna take it to another level? Be a G, be a late. If you want some liberation, better start today. Don't be like Mike, we gotta be like Fred Hampton. That's right, that's what I said. We gotta be the Honda, be your Sada. Baby in the right with black power, mama. Don't be no snitch and don't be no pig. The comrades come and get you, spit your wig. Let's be yourself, that's enough. What you really wanna be when you grow up? Everybody wanna be a star today. So much going on in the galaxy. Jimmy said he wanna be a rapper, but have you ever thought of being an adapter? 10 years from now, will you be able to change? Will you love the game and will you think the same? Will you think I ain't fucking with no capitalism? You don't pay your taxes and you throw you in prison? What you really know about sacrifice? Giving your life, paying the price. The price of freedom is death sometimes. Better that than dumb, deaf and blind. Make a weak heart lose breath and mind. Huey P. Newton came just in time. So I'ma be like him, I'm getting it in until they open the pen, because we destined to win. Hasta Victoria Siempre. I am Fidel, I am Che, I am Toussaint, I'm Cinque. Us revolutionary sensei.